Okay.
Let me just throw this in that this particular slide is nearly identical to the one that we already presented last year at the AGM.
Mhm.
So there's
Yeah.
there's no news in here. The intent is the same. The basis is the same.
hmm so we actually did vote on. Did we vote on the part ones already, Allison?
Specifically, we did not vote on the change to the title description, adding procedures. And
Yes.
specifically, we didn't vote on, and that's why they're in there.
Okay.
And that's vote 11 and vote 12 on the poll.
Yes. So this would be for bylaw change 7.1.
No, it's not a
I
bylaw
think we
change.
cover that. Okay.
Can you go back one slide?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have the.
We've already addressed the first three.
Yep.
And so the Handicappers Manual Part 1 procedures, that's just adding procedures.
Yep.
And then these are the changes to the class rules.
I do not have the part ones handy in the deck that I can find.
Part 1, the only change is calling Part 1 procedures.
Oh, done.
There's no
Okay.
other changes.
So let's vote on that very quickly. Do I have someone to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay. So I'm going to launch the poll on the part 1, and it's to modify the title. And then I'll have Bill Visser, and apologies, Bill, run through this slide that's currently up. And then we'll vote on that as vote number 12. And that will take care of the long technical piece of the presentation outside of a quick little discussion on things roads we'd like to go down. And while we're quickly voting on this, and I'll stop the poll in 15 seconds, where do free-flying sales from 100 to 155 fit in? Adam, would you like to grab that?
Yes. It's all about the extra sail area. If the flying head sail is no bigger than the regular head sail, then there will be only minus 1 second penalty. In other words, any free flying head sail will get a nominal 1 second penalty, even if it is the same size as the Genoa.
And the other thing to remember is we did ban bloopers and streakers.
So maybe to add to this, if somebody is flying a jib top off a sprit or a pole, that will if it's no bigger than a regular jib, that's just a nominal 1 second penalty. If it's bigger, then the area difference is going to be penalized.
Okay. Mr. Visser, may I turn this over to you?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so as Allison alluded to, we're some of these changes are a lot of catch up of this changes to the racing rules over the last number of years. The first part being why the title changes, the part 1 procedures, part 2 class rules. Short story long, when Rule 92 introduced the existence of a technical committee, which theoretically all handicappers are the technical committee, it's because you measurement. One of the items in it is that 78.1 says everybody has to comply with the class rules. Well, what are the PHRF class rules? There's been questions, so that's why we added the class rules title, just to make it identified that, yeah, these are the class rules. 64.4 also requires that that the class rules, if there's a protest, that the decisions, they have to go back to whoever is the person for the class rules. And that's why the biggest change in part 2 is we introduced or section 1 rules, where we declare that part 2 is the class rules to follow. And also, because there has to be a designated person to go to it, we've said that the handicapper associated with the event is the designated person to go to for clarification. Now, the thing to remember out of this one is, and some people did ask the question, no, this does not mean that the handicapper is now automatically having to sit on protests and sit down and decide protests. They are there to advise the protest committee. And the hierarchy is basically the event handicapper, club handicapper, whatever level it is. They're the first person to ask. If they need help, they go up to the district. If the district needs help, it goes up to central council. Okay, so that is different from the rating appeal process. This is in a protest situation where somebody protests somebody for having an invalid certificate, for example. So that is how it goes. It is not, the intent is to clarify so that the protest committee says, we don't like what this guy's saying, so we're going to go to a different level. We're going to go to a different higher. This codifies the structure to stop people from shopping around for a decision that they want. That was really the big driver behind that. Other than that, the rest of the changes really are wrapped around getting consistent, as was described earlier, getting consistent with the wording in the ERS and trying to eliminate any duplication. One of the things that we like to do with race management when I teach it is tell people, don't repeat stuff that's already written. So we, in the past, did have definitions and wording in there. Part of this is to try and reduce that so that there's hopefully less confusion. What that means is, sometimes you may have to look at the equipment rules booklet just for what some of the definitions and things to do. Because when the difficulty is when you repeat it and there's a change, do we get out of line with our changes and interest conflict? So that is really where a lot of these changes came from. Housekeeping, there's going to be more down the road once we get past some of the stuff from today, but that was it. So hopefully that completely muddies the waters for everyone. And I think I've covered everything that I had to cover with that one.
We do have one question. Does part two invoke or reference the equipment rules of sailing?
Does part 2 invoke or reference? Yes, it does. Now, keeping in mind, the definition of the rules is the racing rules of sailing, which include the equipment rules of sailing, which include class rules. So it all does ball together.
With your permission, Mr. Visser, may I launch the poll?
What if I say no?
Oh, that's a good
You're going to go ahead
question.
and do it anyway.
No, I would ask for a point of order with the president, who is chairing the meeting. Anyway, the poll's up. We'll give this a minute. I just want to thank Bill for all of the work. It is a painstaking process to go through and look at every document that we refer to and try and get everything to work together happily. So I'll give it another 30 seconds. I have 2 people saying no and a couple of abstentions. I again completely take my hat off to make sure that Bill and the team does the work around this. Diana helps out an immense amount as well. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate having people with the history and the knowledge who can walk through this. It is not an easy job. So we've had this up for a minute. I'm going to share the results, and wildly in favor again, even more than some of our other items. So great work, Bill.
Thank you. For the people who voted no, I don't want to start the discussion now, but shoot me a message afterwards, and I'd like to address your concern, and that might require me coming back next year and saying, here's some additional wording corrections we have to do. So want to make sure this is clear as mud.
Okay, so I think we're done with that. And one last commercial before we go to Larry again. Future projects, we're going to, as I said, we're going to look at the propeller adjustments. They're very, very generous. And Gary Cook has been, digging through, doing a great job. We want to look at the exposed area, other rating rules, get out and measure prop shaft lengths and things. I like the idea of how much of a disc is covered. The other thing that wasn't considered was the impact of leaving them fixed or letting them freewheel, number of blades, etc. One of the things that Adam and I spend probably a disproportionate time on is looking at other rating rules. And what jumped out at us last year, and I stress last year, that 75% of our classes had 3 or fewer boats. So they would be what you'd call unique to the district or unique to the lake. And 94% of the classes were actually 10 or less. And anyone that's taken statistics in university will begin to recognize what jumps out at you there. So in the last year, we've looked at IRC again, its cousin in the UK called the National Handicap for Cruisers. One of the ones that we looked at was, or look at continuously, is our friends at ORC. They do great work with VPPs, and you can pull out a lot of data. The biggest pool of rabid racers in Europe is probably also covered by Oresis, which is a French system. And they have partnered up actually with ORC to help their ratings. And they have the beauty of having ratings that are a number table that classify race cruisers so that race organizers can organize their races to have better likeness of boats. And every time a new boat shows up on the lake that is a one of so far, you have to look somewhere for things. So the French do a lot of good boats. We had a number of French boats come in, and getting an idea of how perf relates to these other systems is helpful for getting us some data for initial ratings when we can't find any in North America. So everyone's familiar, if they've dinghy raced, with DPN yardsticks, Portsmouth in the UK. German keelboats do that. We've been looking at that. The rules up in the Nordic countries, ORR, and another British system called BPRS. So we've been doing a lot of work looking at these things, trying to figure out how we can help fill in the gaps when the data just isn't there. Would you like to add anything to that, Adam? So that
well, just a bit of orientation here. I'll just pick out ORC from this pile of systems because lately I spent a lot of time on ORC besides having an ORC certificate myself. ORC is a totally open handicapping system or VPP based system. In other words, you can look up their manuals, and if you have the computing power, or you can actually buy their program, you can optimize your boat. But even without going there, you don't need to be a member, just register, and you can download thousands of actual ORC certificates. How do we compare this information with what we have? Well, I picked in the latest exercise that I did, and we can pick other boats too. I picked the J35 as a very well established handicap. And no matter where you go in North America, everybody's looking at the 72 seconds per mile. We can then have a standard J35 out of ORC, and we can compare any other certificate they have on seconds per mile basis, or convert it to time on time and then look at seconds per hour basis. And so we have a benchmark against which we can assess on a relative basis a boat. Just to throw in how this works, there's a new boat showing up on our lake. I can go to ORC, pull out a certificate, and plug in that certificate into our own PHRF Lake Ontario worksheet. Put all the sail dimensions in, and it gives me a handicap based on that ORC measured boat. And then I can see how that relates to the standard J35 and see if our own estimate for the boat provides us with the same difference in performance between the J35 or some other standard boat that we have, benchmark boat we have, and the new boat that we are handicapping. So it is a pretty handy tool. It takes very little work, costs no extra money. And I've been using this and picking out anomalies, and then got into all kinds of discussions with the Central Council where I thought we were off a little bit or much of the handicap. But let's not forget, PHRF is great when you have the number of boats and you have the number of races. If you have one boat that has never been sailed in a PHRF environment, or not in our environment, and that boat is racing by itself, even if it's doing a full season, it will be inadequate basis for us to do a performance-based adjustment. If you look at the statistics rules, this is insufficient sample. So we need some other way of orient ourselves what is closer to reality. And really, I don't want to get much more into the detail, but think about it. Performance handicap racing is based on statistically sufficient results to compare. Now, when we go to point, the situation is much worse because we do not have statistical basis whatsoever. And this is where a problem is with the point-to-point handicaps, that we are at the moment just kind of guessing what system we could use. And it's not, there's nothing solid that we can go by that is performance-based. We can only look at existing handicapping system, how they assess the point-to-point racing boats, because ORC, for instance, provides information on this, different wind ranges and a different type of racing. And I'd like to stop here because it would get too technical after this.
I'll just throw in, thank you, Adam. I'll just throw in, I like running a lot of regressions, and our friends in other PHRF handicap districts have done similar work. And there are a couple of little warnings I'll throw in as well. A lot of the rating systems you get in other countries like the UK, Nordic countries, IRC, all use materially faster wind speeds than Lake Ontario. That's why you have to know all of the systems and what their basis is and try and get things that match our environment. And that's why having handicappers out on the lake, sailing in different areas, out on different boats, is the most valuable source of information out there. And I think that concludes any of the technical items. And
Great.
I have one last technical question. Okay, Scott Lyons would like to discuss how we're going to end up measuring all the spinnakers. He would like basically us to tell racers what we need to do this year. So Adam, do you mind just covering that while I take care of the housekeeping and the presentation in the background?
I don't know if Adam is unmuted.
Scott,
you there, Adam?
yeah, Adam might be muted, but Scott, let us deal with
Okay.
that.
I'm
Here's Adam.
sorry about it. Well, let's go back to what we are doing. We are going from max girth to mid girth. Chances are that the max girth might be bigger than the mid girth or the same. So it is not a mandatory remeasurement of all the sales. It is in the best interest of the owners to ask their spinnaker to be remeasured based on this new rule. We will assume in our database whatever measurement we have, either max or mid girth. That's what is used in the certificates. But if an owner wishes to get a new update, then they can ask the club handicapper and measure this spinnaker.
This closes a loop to ensure that all things that people call spinnakers are actually spinnakers. That's that's really all this does. So while it does create some burden for the local handicapper, and we appreciate it does create some work for that, it's a relatively easy it's an easy process, and or if somebody takes their sales in to get some work done on it, they should get a certificate. Anything that would be relatively new should come with a sailmaker certificate. So just ask for that, and that can be provided. So people can purchase them. Take their sales into a sailmaker, have purchase a measurement certificate from them. If it's done as part of the maintenance work, or it's a new sale, it should come with one. Or we ask that the handicapper can lay it on the lawn and do a quick measurement to ensure that the 75% of it's really the 75% of mid girth is the piece that really matters on this one.
Yeah, and I need to jump in because people are thinking this is something new. We require every asymmetrical sail to be measured. This is not a new requirement. So all we've said is we want the smallest one now instead of all asymmetricals and your largest. So this is actually technically less work. I don't think it's jumping out at people.
I'd like to add that the ERS really is using, as a general rule, the mid girth for all the spinnakers. So that is really the worldwide standard.
Yes.
Measuring the max girth is really done on an exceptional basis.
Yeah, it's an oddball thing that I don't think,